Right, welcome back. Of course, a lot of people will know her, remember her for her former position. That was chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. But Florence Jaoko has a great deal of experience, extensive experience as far as judicial and human rights training is concerned. She's an advocate of the High Court. She has served as a magistrate and principal deputy registrar of the High Court in Kenya. She has been a lecturer at the University of Nairobi and at the Kenya School of Law. Currently, she is the lecturer, back again, University of Nairobi. Welcome to the Power Breakfast Show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, of course, many people would still remember your work as far as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights is concerned. What is one thing that you would say will always stand out for the work that you did there?
Well, I think for me, I think the most critical thing that the Commission did was during the constitutional review process, just ensuring that we had a very strong Bill of Rights in the Constitution. And if you look at the Constitution, human rights is not just confined to the Bill of Rights. I think the fact that as you read the whole Constitution, it's something that is running through the whole Constitution, whether it is in provision of services to citizens, whether it is in terms of how public officers and state officers are supposed to engage with the public. I think for me that was very fundamental, that now as a country we know that human rights is really a principle and part of our value system, and it is established by the Constitution.
All right. I mean, you look at the former regime and you see a lot of things, especially what happened in 2007, IDPs and all that. Right now we have a new regime in place. What do you think is really cut out for them to really focus on when it comes to human rights?
Well, I think first and foremost, of course, for this regime is just in general, it must be compliance with the Constitution, because I think that Kenyans have invested so much in the Constitution and there's so much hope that we will never go back to where we were before, where there was no respect for democratic values, there was no respect for human rights. So I think that for this regime, they must be the regime that demonstrates to Kenyans that the Constitution was not in vain, that the principles that are in the Constitution are actually going to be implemented. And I think that even the very first things that they have to do, things like appointments that they are going to make, the Constitution is very clear, and those are part of the human rights principles in terms of inclusivity, diversity, that we must be able to see the face of Kenya. We must also be able to see different types of people, because the face of Kenya is not just about tribe or race. It is also about diversity, such as things like disabilities. There are persons with disabilities. There are, minorities that are within minorities. So they must be able to demonstrate to the country that these principles will actually be implemented. So I think they have so much to do. They must be the regime that demonstrates to us that in terms of separation of powers, that the executive is going to let Parliament do its work. And then again, of course, we know that we have the opposition that is also in the Constitution, protected by the Constitution. So this regime, because we've come from a place of a grand coalition, so in essence, we really didn't have opposition in a structured way. And we didn't really have it even before. We had opposition before. I think in 2002, KANU was the opposition. And then, it kind of evolved to the extent that it wasn't very clear now who was the opposition. But this time round, I think that they are the regime that must demonstrate that even when it comes to protecting the turf of the opposition, and for the opposition themselves, demonstrating that they are protected by the Constitution, and it is a democratic principle that we must have a vibrant opposition in Parliament and even in the county governments. So I think that in that regard, they really do have, their job is cut out for them in that general way. In specific ways, the Constitution with the Bill of Rights is so extensive. I think there'll be such high expectations on the part of this government, because you're talking about economic and social rights, which are very, very difficult to deliver on. They have to deliver on health, water, education. And education, I know that one of the promises they made was, the one of provision of laptops to students. And that is what everybody's talking about. But education is more than that. So they have to find a way of ensuring that not only is education accessible, but that it's quality education. So I think that those are rights that normally we've not thought so much about. We've thought that, education is a right, it's a development question, but now the Constitution says it is a right. And they must ensure that it's not just a right that is given without quality assurance.
Now, judging by what has happened since the elections, the operations of the Inspector General of Police and his feared declarations that you will not have demonstrations, that we need peace. I thought that when come out of that system where policemen say, you can't demonstrate, you can't do that, we need peace. Isn't the Inspector of Police, the Inspector General of Police, abrogating the rights of Wananchi to move and demonstrate as guaranteed by the Constitution, when he says, no, you can't, we need peace?
In fact, I don't think that was a proper directive. It was in contravention of the Constitution, because the Constitution is very clear. We have a right to demonstrate as citizens if we do not like something that is going on. And we have to demonstrate not violently, because demonstration is just about giving your idea or expressing your dissatisfaction with certain things that have happened. And the role of the police is to keep the peace, to ensure that as you're demonstrating, first and foremost as demonstrators, that you are not infringing on anybody else's rights. And I don't think that the way to do it is to tell Kenyans that you cannot demonstrate. Because if you tell people that they cannot demonstrate, and the Constitution is very clear that they have a right to do that, then you are violating that right. The other thing is you're then giving people the opportunity to go underground with the expression of dissatisfaction that they have. I think the idea of having freedom of expression, freedom of demonstration, is so that these things are debated on the surface, where they are happening, not underground, where people are now thinking of doing things that are subversive. And I think that would be the most dangerous thing for us as a country, to go back to where we believe that I cannot demonstrate, but now I can do subversive things. Let people demonstrate, let them be in a controlled space where we know that they're dissatisfied and there are others who are satisfied.
But then the concern has been, of course, if you look back to 2007, there has been a bit of really no deep understanding on how to handle demonstrations. And perhaps you'd want to understand why the Inspector General basically said, at this particular time, kindly desist from demonstrating, because it's very volatile. Does that argument come in?
I think, you see, the thing is, what I'm saying is that whereas you may understand that, yes, there's a question of 2007 and what happened, but I think in this situation, first and foremost, I think the leaders of the parties had already said that we are going to court. So there was a court process. And I believe that even what happened after the court delivered its decision demonstrated that Kenyans were ready to move on, that Kenyans were ready to accept a process even if they disagree with the final finding. And I think that is the maturity in a democracy, that we as Kenyans needed to be allowed to actually demonstrate that as Kenyans we are mature. We can go there, we can stand outside the Supreme Court, wait for the decision, and even if we don't like it, we are not going to start fighting anybody because we don't like the decision. And I think the Supreme Court itself had made arrangements for big screens to air this the proceedings. So it's a contradiction. Who was going to watch the proceedings if you're telling people not to be there? So I think the idea, for me, the role of the police there was really to be present at the places where they thought people may come up with, people may be violent or be disorderly, but it was just to maintain order. You cannot maintain order by telling people you don't come here, there's no show. Then what is your role as the police? How do you demonstrate that you're able to interact with the public to the extent that the public can keep order because you as the police are present, you have communicated to them how they should behave?
But then the concern is, in an ideal situation, of course, that really works. But we've seen, based on history, a group decides to demonstrate, and then we have all these hooligans also who join in, and then we have looters. How do we handle that? How do we balance? Should we have some sort of guided democracy then?
I don't think it's about guided democracy, Mr. Mwakazi, because even if you look at countries, even developed countries, I don't know if you know what went on, for example, in the Northern Ireland, where people actually demonstrate, and you can watch these things even on YouTube. They have running battles with the police, but the police are there. They have steps that they take. If it is a question of spraying you with water because you are misbehaving, they will spray you with water. If it's a question of using tear gas, they will use tear gas. But the important thing is to inform the public that we as the police, we are warning you that if you disrupt anything, if you're going to misbehave, there are steps we will take. These steps can include tear gas, can include all these things. We can even arrest you. Can even give orders for you to disperse. And anybody who does not disperse, we are going to deal with you accordingly. And that's the dialogue that we need, so that we don't believe that because people are sitting in their homes quietly, that they are orderly. I think we need to demonstrate that people are orderly when they are out there in the streets and they are obeying the police. And when they don't obey the police, it will be very clear what steps the police can take. And the police then have all the legitimate reason to take those steps.
Let's go to another subject where I think there is infringement of rights. There is a controversy involving production of a play by a school called Butere Girls. This play went all the way from the district to the province up to the national level. The play is depicting some communities against others. It has been banned.
Shackles of Doom.
It has been banned from the national contest in Mombasa. And reason is not following the themes of this year's theme of harmony and integration, national cohesion and integration. And they banned it just because of that. We understand it's a very well-produced play. It is gone all the way from down the district to national level. But that national level, they rejected it, banned it. Isn't that an infringement of the rights of the children, the rights of the actor, the players, the script writers? And in any case, what example are we setting? Banning a play. It's like going to the old time of Kenyatta and Moi, when books and literature were banned.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing, Butegi, because what we are saying is this: even when we are talking about peace, and cohesion, peace and cohesion do not exist in a vacuum. And I think the only way we as Kenyans can be able to address our issues is if we are free, we have the freedom to examine these issues. And you cannot examine these issues somewhere behind, in the darkness and, not in the open. And I think when you ban a play, first of all, if you look at the Constitution, it actually protects your right to culture, to this expression, to creativity. And if you do that, if you are actually banning a play, it means that you are shutting down the creative arts. Because today it's a play, tomorrow it may just be another artistic expression. It may be satire, because satire is a recognized form of art. It's a recognized way for societies to actually engage on things that they don't like. And I think it is very wrong for us to say that because we don't like this play, because some people are uncomfortable with it, therefore it will not be shown. And the maturity that as Kenyans we need, and that for me is the important thing, because you cannot have democracy if we are not mature. And democracy and freedom of expression, all these freedoms allow you to be able to say as a citizen that, you know, okay, Mutegi has produced that play, I don't like it, you know, and I don't like it because of ABCD, and somebody else, Mwakazi, will say I like it because of ABCD. And that is the diversity in a society that helps us to grow and even to be tolerant, because if we are not confronted with these issues, with these alternative views, how will we develop our tolerance levels? And I think freedom is also about tolerance. So I think that the idea that we can ban a play is really, I mean, it's taking us way back to the dark ages, in my view.
Another concern here, of course, there is freedom of expression, but there was a concern whereby there is information that might tend to poison the young minds. So we have to have some sort of restriction. There is information that should not be allowed in the public domain. And that's basically one of the concerns from the organizers.
But Mr. Mwakazi, the fact that you're saying it should not be allowed in the public domain, does it mean it is not existing in our private domains? Does it mean these things don't occur? Because if you don't give people the opportunity to discuss these things, and a lot of things, you know, sometimes I'm sure you've done literature. I did literature. And I know that literature is one of the roles of literature, to actually confront you with borderline ideas. Because when you have these borderline ideas, it forms your value system. Because you are then able to assimilate different sorts of ideas that are coming your way. And, you know, I remember when we were in, you know, at the university and even in high school, when things like Petals of Blood, everybody would be so afraid that, you know, Ngugi has written this terrible book condemning the country and, you know, not respecting the leadership. And now you read Petals of Blood and you ask yourself, I mean, some of the things he was raising, they are legitimate. Some may be highly exaggerated. But the human mind, I think the brain that we are given and the power of, you know, interrogation is such that you are able as an individual to go through this and say, I agree with this, I don't agree with this, I think this, and that is the discussion we need. If you say that it is not supposed to be in the public domain, where will that discussion take place? And isn't it more dangerous to make those discussions take place behind closed doors, where you don't even know what people will do?
In fact, the same ministry has banned a book. An author is, I think, in New Zealand.
Yeah, the one on homosexuality
and gay people.
Yeah.
Surely, if the book is not read in this country, are we going to say since the book is not read, but it's not a set book? You know, it was supposed to be a set book, but they removed it. Are we saying that therefore that will reduce people from being gays and lesbians and?
I mean, absolutely. You said it's something that is happening in the private domain. Does it mean it shouldn't be introduced in the public domain? And I would want to take you back to the advert we had on condom pangoni. There was concern, and it was actually, it had to be pulled out. So the question is, are you saying there shouldn't be any kind of regulation? It's information in the private domain, so no regulations at all.
I'm not saying there should be no regulations. And even when you look at the Constitution, that's why it allows, for example, even the freedom of the media. That's why you have the Media Council, for example, to determine what content can you be able to air at certain times. And this is because human beings are progressive, you know. There are certain things that you'll be able to expose a 1-year-old to a 2-year-old, you know, progressively until they become adults. So in my view, those regulations are there to guard, because what we are saying as a country is that there are value systems that we want to implant or, give to our children or give to the new generation. But this value system that we are giving them, it will still be challenged by other value systems. And that is why progressively, as you grow older, you are then allowed to be able to interrogate for yourself, assuming that your value system that has been given to you through, first of all, the family, because the family is the single most important foundation for values, and then the society, the school system. But those systems cannot, in my view, be the only systems that are giving you a value system. They give you the foundation so that when you interrogate things later on in your life, you're able to go back to that value system. But by excluding it completely from your purview, it doesn't mean you will not encounter it. And for me, I think this idea that somebody who is in, if you are in Form 4, surely the literature that you read in Form 4 must be very different from the literature that you read while you are in primary school. And the literature that you read in the university is very different from the literature that you read when you are in Form 4. And that is the progression. But in terms of regulations, I don't think that regulations are just to be at the whims of an individual. For example, if you're banning this book, who sat in this committee and who did they interrogate to be able to say that, as a country, as Kenya, we don't like this? And I think that's the kind of impunity we want to move away from. That the students, whoever wrote this play, for it to have gone, Mutegi says it went from the local to the national level. By the time it was going through all this chain, where were all these other systems that are supposed to be interrogating the value system of this place? So when you come to the national level, and maybe one individual or two individuals decide, no, this is not good for us, what are you saying about all these other people who had allowed it to reach that level? So I think even the decision-making process, is it participatory? Who exactly determined that it is not a proper play?
Right. Perhaps just as we come to an end of the interview, if I may take you back to 2012, it's actually a report written on Capital FM News Mobile. You said not confirming the charges will lead to a lot of disappointment, especially for the victims in relation to the ICC charges. Right now we look at some of the news coming in. It's like the cases are basically crumbling down rather. Is there any future? Is there any hope for the victims?
Perhaps the question should be is, what did your organization, your commission do in terms of, because you've been said you helped Ocampo. Your Ocampo relied on what you guys did. And now the witnesses are running away. What is your view of this?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important for us to let me set the record straight. Yeah. The commission did a report on the post-election violence. If you read our report, the commission was very clear. We recommended for a High Court division to actually look at the cases that we thought should be tried. And our recommendations were also very clear. We said that these are allegations. They should be investigated. And then out of the investigations, our first recommendation was for trial in Kenya. Then we gave our information to the Waki Commission, and the Waki Commission was again also very clear that we should have the trials in Kenya. And then if the trials were not possible in Kenya, that is when the alternative was the ICC process. And this went through Parliament. So in terms of the decision of where the trials were to be held, it had nothing to do with the National Commission on Human Rights. It had nothing to do with the Waki Commission. It had everything to do with Parliament. So it was our parliamentarians, our leaders, who determined that we were going to The Hague. So when now the cases are said to be crumbling, I think it is for the elected leaders to actually give direction. Because the fact of the matter is, if somebody was killed in 2007, if somebody was evicted from their homes in 2007, I don't think that that pain will go away simply by not having any trial at all, whether it is in Kenya or it is in The Hague. I think what the justice process requires is for people to understand that, yes, I lost my loved one and I lost them in these circumstances. And this is what has happened. I went for a trial. If the person is tried and found not guilty, I believe that as the person who lost my loved one, I will still be happy that there was a process. I think the problem is when we are saying that there's no process at all. So are we saying that the people who died in 2007, it really doesn't matter? They died and we should forget that they died. The people who are evicted from their homes, some have been settled. There are some who have not been settled. What is going to happen? But even worse, have we actually gone to those communities and tried to make sure that there is real reconciliation? Not just superficial reconciliation, that people are actually, they've sat with their neighbors and they've actually, vented out and said that, you did wrong to me. You as a community, you were against us. We are still together, and we really want to define our destiny together as communities who fought in 2007. And I think if we don't do that, again, it will be this idea that there are things we can settle in our private domains, we can move on, nobody knows about it, and we are healing. But I don't think that is what is supposed to happen. So I'm hoping that for this regime, that they will look at those issues, that they'll be able to have solutions for those who've not been settled, that they will have solutions for those whose family members, whose children, whose parents died in 2007. What is going to happen? Are there going to be trials, even here in Kenya, for those people? Because when we talk about The Hague, those are high level. There's nobody who is no Kenyan at The Hague. There's no evidence against them that they were seen with pangas slashing anybody. There's nothing like that. But there's evidence in Kenya of neighbors who took pangas and killed others. So are we going to keep quiet about those neighbors? And that, I think, for the victims of post-election violence, those are issues that they will never forget. I don't think you forget if somebody invades your home and kills your whole family. You don't.
Absolutely.
What do you say about, we have run out of time, what do you say about those witnesses that have run away and they're supposed to, claims were made that they were coached by your people?
Well, I don't know about, because those are ICC witnesses, because that's the other thing. Everybody assumes that the National Commission has these witnesses that are their witnesses, because the cases at the ICC, again, remember, the information was from, from the Waki Commission, from the National Commission, from the Kenya government, from the political parties, because let's not forget that immediately when the violence was going on, both the PNU side and the ODM side went to The Hague and reported to The Hague. They were all calling on The Hague to try each other. And they gave information there. So that information that is at the ICC is not just information from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. It's information from all manner of sources.
All right.
Yeah.
So many thanks indeed, of course, talking to Florence Jaoko, former chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. She's now a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. I'm Johnson Mokazi.
I'm Jackie Jao.
And of course, Florence
Thank you.
Jaoko. Many thanks. See you tomorrow as God wills.